Raw are also in Lightroom, but not all of them. I'll let you know when we are. And just a quick shout out to everybody there. Is there anyone there from the Cafe crew? If you're there, I just give you guys a special shout out. So why don't we share the screen and jump in and have a look. So I'm going to hit the screen sharing is not turned on. If you just want to allow me to share the screen there, Stephen. And let's have a look. There we go. Perfect. All right. So we're going to go to my main desktop here. And I'm just going to drag this window out of the way. And you guys should see Photoshop. Let me know if you can all see Photoshop. I want to make sure we're good there. Let me hit that share there. If you can let me know, Stephen, because I don't see the chat right now, if people can see the screen.
I can see it on my end. I'm checking this chat now. Everyone that's on, please let us know if you can see. I got a thumbs up. Yes, everyone can see.
All right. Okay. So fasten your seatbelts. Let's go. So let me just I'm just moving the webinar stuff off of my screen. So just give me 1 second here, get everything set up. All right, great. All right. So the first one we're going to have a look at is we're going to be looking at some Camera Raw stuff. Now, when it comes to launching Camera Raw, there's 3 ways to get images into Camera Raw. In case you don't know, I know a lot of you know this, but some of you might be a little bit newer to this. So I just want to let you know. So the 3 ways to do it is you can open an image inside of Photoshop. And why don't I do that right now just to kind of demonstrate, because this is worth knowing. So I'll just open this into Photoshop right now. So I'm just going to choose to open into Photoshop here. All right. So the first way is to go under filter, and then we're going to choose the Camera Raw, and we're using it as a plugin. Now, this is the same Camera Raw that you're going to get everywhere else, but you're going to see a difference. When you open it inside of Photoshop here as a filter, you're going to notice the crop tool's not there. You're going to notice that some of the adaptive wide angle's not there, and also at the bottom, the ability to resize the image. Now, this is on purpose. This is intentional. The reason for this is because when we're working from within Photoshop, we can take a layer and we can bring a layer into Camera Raw. Now, think about this. If you've got a multi-layer document and you've got a layer in there, and then you're like, oh, maybe I'll crop this, maybe I'll skew it a little bit, you got to realize that would be affecting the entire document, and you could get a real mess out of your document. So that's why those tools are not there, because you don't want to resize something based on maybe you're just working on that one layer, if that makes sense. All the other tools are exactly the same. Now, the other ways to get things in is if we just choose File, Open, and then we're inside of Photoshop. Now, if we go to a raw file, and you can tell a raw file because it's a DNG, an ARW, which would be a Sony, or a CR2, which is a Canon, or an NEF, which would be a Nikon, or I believe it's a RAF for a Fuji. So if you have a raw file and you choose Open, and we click open, now it's just going to open directly in Camera Raw because it's a raw file, right? So that's the second way to get an image in there. But what if you have a JPEG and you want to have access? See how the tools are here? See the crop tools there, resize tool. There's many more of those kind of tools in here now. Well, what if you have a JPEG, or you have a PNG, or a TIFF? Those are the different formats. It supports also a GIF. And you want to access those, all those tools. How do you do that? Well, the other way, and it's a way that I work a lot, and that's with Bridge. Now, Bridge, if you're not aware of it, I think most of you are, but not everybody, is aware of everything. I'm not going to assume people know everything. Bridge is an application that comes with Photoshop. It's been around for a long time, but what it enables us to do is access any of these images. It could be an ARW file. These are all raw files here, or it could be a JPEG. It could be anything. And if we right click, now we have the ability to open in Camera Raw. So this is a JPEG. I'm opening this JPEG. Now we're in Camera Raw, and this is the latest version that shipped last week, by the way. They just updated it. But notice crop tool and all those other tools are there. Once again, if I'm in Photoshop and I choose to filter Camera Raw, notice that crop tool is not there. And so sometimes that confuses people. So hopefully that clears it up. So if you just want to make image adjustments and you're not going to be changing the scale, or you're not going to be rotating the image or doing anything like that, then just open it as a filter. But if you need to do some of these other processes, now you know exactly what you can do. All right, so why don't we start now with our first example? So the first example, I'm just going to go into Bridge. And by the way, let us know in the comments what you guys are using. Are you using, what camera are you using? Are you guys shooting Canon, Sony, Nikon, whatever, Olympus, whatever you may be shooting? Let us know. Fuji. I shoot Sony myself right now. I used to shoot Canon, and I switched over because at the time I needed mirrorless, and Canon didn't have mirrorless at that time. All right, so let us know that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is why don't we start with an image? And I think a good image to start with would be this image here. And I'm going to open this in Camera Raw. This is a RAW file shot on Canon. Not, it doesn't really matter what it was shot on because, Camera Raw is going to work the same no matter what application. Now, I'm just going to expand this. Let me know, if there's any issues, if anything is getting cut off, because I'm running a slightly higher resolution than I normally do. Normally, I run 1080 when I'm doing a webinar, but I wanted to have a little bit more screen real estate. I just want to make sure that's working. And under my display here, you can see this is my 321C SW. And I'm running this at 25 by 1440. So can everyone see that screen? Do you see any, Stephen, is anybody saying there's any issues there? Anything getting cut off, or are we good?
So far, no one has mentioned anything. Some people said it's looking good, so I think you're all good.
All right, great. So I just wanted to give us a little more space because, I see a little thumbs up. Okay, you can emote if you want. I like that. So sometimes I just like a little more screen real estate than squashing everything into 1080 all the time that we often do. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to show you, this is not a brand new feature. This feature was released in the recent big update, and that's the ability to do generative remove inside of Camera Raw. Now, yes, we can do this inside of Photoshop. Why do we want to do it in Camera Raw? Well, some people like to work, number one, they like to stay in that raw space all the time. So you're keeping, the 16-bit image. Of course, you can work with 16-bit in Photoshop as well. But the other reason, too, is a lot of these tools are also shared with Lightroom, and also we have some Lightroom users. I know for myself, I like to start in Camera Raw or Lightroom, make my initial adjustments, then bring it into Photoshop, and then I'll do my layered work and more advanced work later on. All right, so let's get moving on to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the eraser tool, which is the remove tool. Now, the remove tool has been updated, and now it has generative AI. You can see that option is there. Now, if you don't want to use AI, you want to have nothing to do with it, that's fine. You can just turn that off, and you can use it as a remove tool, and it'll work, in a content aware mode, and it'll work pretty good still. But obviously, it's going to work better. All right, so we've got this shot. This was actually an educator summit, Adobe Educator Summit. We did it at Eve's Movie Ranch, and this is in New Mexico. And so what we want to do is we want to keep this character here. But, here's the rest of our group. Basically, we're just a bunch of tourists that are in the way. Let's get rid of everybody. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on detect objects. You don't have to do that. But the nice thing about that is when you make your initial brush strokes, they don't have to be clean. What it will do, notice there, is it detects the outline of the person. Let me undo that. And I'm going to do this again and maybe miss some bits. Maybe I'll get a little bit there, miss part of the foot, and go there and notice it's still, okay, it wasn't very good there. Let me make that smaller. And I just want to show you, so you can scribble select, right, basically. And then what it will do is it'll detect the person. If it misses a bit, you just paint over it. Now, once you've applied your first selection, that auto detection is not available. So I could go ahead and I could just remove this person, but why don't I expand it a little bit more and let's remove this person as well. So we could do a second person on here. And in fact, I want to get rid of all these people. I could paint over all of these people right now if I wanted, but just for fun, I'm just going to choose remove right now. And we're going to let it do its thing on these people. Now, sometimes there's an advantage in doing it a certain, like a few people at a time. But notice that works really well. We got a little bit of green there. But here's the thing. We can go into the variations and we can choose a second or a third option. I like the second and third option because also we don't have this weird hieroglyphics up there that we were getting. Notice that on that part there. So we can go 2 or 3. I think 3 looks the best. All right. So here's another reason why I didn't do it all at once, because what if I liked part of this? I didn't like part of what was going on here. It's better sometimes to do it smaller pieces or piecemeal. The other reason is the resolution. The resolution is limited to 1080, 1024 blocks. So if I do a larger area, then it's going to spread it over and we're going to get lower resolution all over. All right, so that's one of the things to be aware of too. But just remember that 1080, 1024 might seem like a very small space, but it can actually cover some pretty large areas without it looking too bad. All right, so let's go and do the rest of it over here. So why don't we turn detect objects on again, and we'll scribble select this guy, and it's going to just mostly detect him. And why don't we grab everybody else, and then we're going to do a second removal. Now I'm starting to wonder what is going to happen to the dog, right? So if we were doing a content-aware fill or using the traditional tools, you would just cut off, the dog would just essentially just be missing at the back. So we're going to see if we can get rid of these guys. And we don't know what's going to happen to the dog. So let's hit remove and find out. And there we go. All right, so the dog is now lying down, but maybe we don't like that. We can choose a second option. Okay, we've got a two-headed dog, maybe not so good. All right, the third option is definitely the best. And I could just clean up that little back bit there and the tail would be tucked. But of course, we could always hit generate and we could try it again and see what it looks like the next time around. Okay, there we go. Now we've got a better looking dog. We've got better options. Okay, that's a little funky. Maybe that's the best option we have there. So you can see that we do have the ability to change things, but also under the fill, we could just use the standard remove so we don't have to use the generative remove. Now, the standard remove is probably not going to work as well. Yeah, see, that's what we would have got without using the generative. And look at this, it messes up the wagon wheels and everything. So you can see the generative is definitely going to work better. And sometimes, when you're done, you might just want to go over and patch some different areas. All right, I'm going to show you something else, though. Let's cancel out of here because there's some newer additions to this. I'm sure some of you are excited to see. And one of those is people removal. So I'm going to grab a couple of these. Now, this is using the same remove tool. I'm just going to open these in Camera Raw. All right.
Colin, you
So
did
this
have
is,
a question really
yes.
quickly.
Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
Mark Bates, he asks, do you need to clean up the gravel after the people are removed? I noticed the gravel is not the same.
Yeah, sometimes you do. And you can just at that point, because all the messes out is quite simple, I would just probably use the clone stamp tool to bring back the texture there at that point. But what it's done is it's not necessarily perfect or it's going to do everything in one go, but what it's doing is it's making it a lot easier. Because could you imagine starting, if those people are just trying to clone everything, that would take a very long time. So yeah, in that case, you good eye there. You notice the gravel was a little bit soft, so I would just clone the other gravel, and then you would have a pretty good image by the time you were done with a lot less work. All right, so the other thing we're going to do now is we removed those people, but now just released last week, it has the ability to detect people and remove them inside of Camera Raw. Now, we had this functionality inside of Photoshop, but now it's an ACR, which is fun, but it's in its infancy. So let's have a look and see what we've got. So the first thing you want to do is you want to enable this. We're in Camera Raw. This is known as a technology preview. So it's not in the beta of Photoshop. It's in the actual Photoshop. And I heard some people say, I hate installing Photoshop and the beta. Well, these features, you can actually access them from the regular Photoshop. But what you've got to do is hit this little gear, and then you're going to see technology previews. Turn that on and then restart Photoshop. And then this is going to enable this feature. So if you click on your tool here, the same tool we used, you'll see reflections and people. Those are both technology previews. If you don't see them, go into that gear once again, because every time I do a tutorial, people say, I don't have that feature. Well, the feature is here under the gear. Once you enable it, restart, you'll see them. If you don't see them, go into Creative Cloud, choose your apps, and then you're just going to choose view updates, and then you're going to update it, right? So that's another way that you want to do that too. Make sure you've got the latest version, then grab that gear, and then you should be good to go. All right, so I could go over here and I could brush all these people, and it would take a while. But the second thing to realize in this is more complicated than being here in Chicago. we've got reflections of people as well. So that's an added level of complexity, right? So it would take a little bit of time to brush this. So if we just click this little button here under people, now it's going to detect them. And notice it's detected pretty much all of them. It didn't get all of them. Now, in this particular, this is a brand new feature and it's a technology preview. We don't have the ability to brush people like we do in the regular remove tool. My guess is, I don't know anything definitive, but I'm going to guess, that there's a good chance that that will be added later, as they add features. Because normally when Adobe drops, a new feature, they get it working, then they add more features. So we've detected them. Let's see how well it does in removing. So we're going to hit remove and we're going to let it do its thing. And by the way, this is pretty slow at the moment. Probably, it's fresh, it's in the oven right now. So, being a technology preview, this is not the final speed or final functionality. It's just giving us a chance to play around with it, before it's finalized and perfected. All right, so we're getting there. If there's any other questions that we're getting, now's a good time. Although I do notice that usually these progress bars tend to really go fast at the end of the progress bar.
So far, no questions though.
All right. Almost there. All right, boom. Okay, is it perfect? No, but it certainly is a lot better than where we were, and it saved us a lot of time. So the thing we can do now is we can go in and we can just use the regular remove tool now. And if we want to get rid of these issues here, we can just go over here. We can just select them. Even the people here in the bean. I'll just do a couple just so you can see that it works. Now, I'm actually impressed that it was able to get any of these reflections, because if you look at these, a lot of them don't even look like people, right? Because of the distortion. And the people detection, in case we're going to ask, it doesn't detect other objects. It doesn't, at least that I've noticed, it doesn't detect animals or anything else, just people. Okay, now we can hit remove. And this is using the AI remove tool. Well, actually, it's not even using the AI. I need to turn that on. Let me turn that on. There we go. And let's try that again with the AI. But that's actually without the AI, which is surprisingly good. Let's do it with the AI. And it's going to be even better. I'll just do a few just to save time. I'm not going to select them all because we don't care. We're not trying to get a perfect image here. I just want to show you how this works. And now if we hit remove, it takes a little bit longer for the AI, but this is a lot faster than the people removal. And, we could have selected those people as well, just as easily. Almost there. Okay, there we go. And as you can see, did a pretty good job. But missed any areas, no big deal. You would just go back and do them. But sometimes when people are using these remove tools, sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this, but I bet it's happened to a lot of you. When you go to replace it, instead of disappearing, it puts something else in that place. So here's an image that happens to. Sometimes it's generative AI, so I don't know if it's going to do it in this instance, but if it does, I'll be able to show you how to get around it. If it doesn't, we'll make it do it. All right, so here I am at in Manhattan at the Brooklyn Bridge. As you know, you can't go anywhere without there being people. There's always people, especially now in the age of Instagram. So any spots that you see, people share it. Now there's lots of people. So why don't we choose the people? And notice that it chooses the woman behind me. It also chooses these crowds behind me, but it doesn't select me, which is good, because what it does is it's looking for the distracting people, not all the people in the picture, because the person in the picture is the subject. Now, of course, if you want to remove them, you could just use the remove tool. Now, if you didn't want to remove, like maybe I didn't want to remove this lady, I could select her and I could hit the delete key, and notice we get a pin for each one of those. So I could do that. In this case, I do. So let's just undo this. And let's just go into people again. And we'll just select it again. Great. Second time, it always does it much faster. And then we're just going to choose remove and see what it does. Now, previously, the woman on the left has been replaced with some strange objects while I've been doing this. Yeah, there we go. We got one there. We got a drink. So what do you do in a situation like that? Everything else looks pretty good. Well, what we can do in a situation like that is turn on show overlay, and then you see the pins. Select the pin, just the one where the woman was, and now notice we have a generate option. We don't have variations in here. I would assume that maybe in some time in the future we will, but now we can just choose generate, and we can just regenerate just that one pin and not the others. Okay, looks like we still have a problem. And then you could just regenerate it a couple of times. All right, this really, really wants to give me something. That's fine, no big deal. But that, just hitting generate is a good way to get around it. In this, situation, it's like, that's not that hard. We can just go like that and we can just generate and remove it. But I did have some big polls and some weird things appeared. And sometimes you might get another person or something like that. In this case, that thing just definitely just does not want to disappear. No big deal. You get the general idea. Once again, that's why it's beta. All right, so let's get out of there. And I want to show you another functionality in here, and that's reflection removal. Now, this is one that we've been wanting for a long time. I think it was about 3 years ago. I saw this at Adobe Max, and they have the sneaks, and they showed it, and people got really excited. I shared a video, and then every week I got a comment, is that reflection removal there yet? No, no, no. Well, it's here now. So we're going to grab the same removal. It's going to go into the same remove algorithm, and then you'll notice we have reflections. So this one, we twirl it open, and we have the ability to apply. So notice there's a sheet of glass over the front. So this is a sheet of, plexiglass. This is, it's like a museum now. This is in Williams, Arizona. So you can look into this old train. This is a really cool old vintage train, but they don't want people walking through there. So you can just look through the glass and you get reflections. Now, where else do you get this? I get this a lot, shooting out of a moving car, shooting out of a hotel window, shooting out of an airplane. It's designed for these kind of things, and it works extremely well. Let me show you. I'm just going to choose apply. So there's reflections and there's glare going on from this glass. So look at that. Boom. It's as if the glass is not there. It works really, really well. Notice it did not affect this part here. Now, here's the thing. We have the ability to move the slider. So if we move this slider, we can go down to 0. This is where we started. But the interesting thing is if we go the other way, we can actually get the reflection on itself. So it's interesting that we can see that. Now, why would this be useful? But, to a lot of people, it would not be useful. But to creative people like us, it's like, oh, if I want a reflection and I want to superimpose a reflection in Photoshop, composite it in, I would grab this and then I would just open it like this, pop it into my other image in screen mode or something like that. And then now I've got a reflection. Maybe I'm compositing an area. Maybe I'm putting an ATM machine in there and there's a screen and I want a reflection on that screen. I could take this reflection and I could use it. That's just one idea. So it's kind of fun for compositing elements, but obviously most of us are going to use it this way to get rid of the reflection. And if you just want to reduce the reflection, you could use it that way. If you do want to show, hey, there is a little reflection here, but I don't want it so bad, we have the ability to do that. So I think that's a really cool feature. Now, this feature and the people removal are not available inside of Lightroom, just in Camera Raw. All right, so let's get out of here. And
We
question,
do
yeah.
have a few questions.
Yeah.
Um, okay, from Sure, they asked, would this work on removing reflections on old cars from the 50s hubcaps and bumpers, i.e., cars show with reflections of people walking around?
Great question. At the moment, I would say no. In some situations, you might get a little bit of luck, but it does not work with any other reflections other than just a sheet of plate glass. So it could be a restaurant or something like that. I've tried it on cars. It does not remove those reflections on there at the moment. The other thing it doesn't do, it has, because I don't work for Adobe, so I'm not trying to sell you the features. I'm just showing you them. So I'm happy to talk about the shortcomings as much as I
Mhm,
am, the good parts of them. And one of the things it doesn't do right now too is a specular highlight. If you get something that's like really bright and it's blowing out,
mhm,
not that, see that highlight there, see how there's detail in that highlight?
mhm.
if that was a specular highlight that was blown out, it will not generate anything to fill that space. So that highlight will still be there, but you can also go into the remove tool and paint over it and use generative fill to remove it manually. But the reflection will not remove those at the moment either. So it is a limited, but once again, it's technology preview. I think it's amazing what it's doing at the moment, and it's just going to get better over time. Yeah, was there another question there too?
Yeah, there are a few questions. We have another question from Monta May, and they asked, would it work for taking the glare off of a photo framed artwork?
Yes. Yes, it does. I tried that actually. I've got a tutorial on YouTube on the Photoshop Cafe channel. Just go to Photoshop Cafe where I've got a picture. Literally, I did that exact thing with it, and yes, it does work. But the one thing is, when you take the picture of that, and I did show that in the tutorial as well, make sure that you turn off the living room lights or wherever that picture is. If there's a light source that's reflecting like a bulb or something, turn it off
Mhm.
first and then take that picture, and it will remove it completely. If a hot spot appears, like it's reflecting that light bulb will still be there.
Okay. Okay. And Ian asks, I wonder what happens with the beam with the remove reflections.
It's not gonna do anything. Yeah.
Okay. Andy asks, when I tried the reflection removal, it added more reflections on one photo. So what would you say to that?
I'd say, hey, it's beta.
Okay. Mark asks, does this only work in RAW only?
Yes, it does. And that's another thing too. You can't take a JPEG, convert it to RAW and try and get it to work. It only works in native RAW. If you were to take a TIFF and convert it to DNG, that won't work. And there's certain types of cameras that are not supported yet too. So all your main common cameras are going to be supported. Popular cameras, I guess, is a better word to use. Works with
Mhm.
iPhones and things like that, but not all cameras will be supported. And it has to be native raw, because I had someone I was actually working with on that, was trying to help them. They were trying to do some archival images, and there wasn't really that workaround. No.
Hmm. Okay. Bill Benson asked, what about glasses on a person?
Good question. It may, and it may not. It's hit and miss. I haven't had a ton of luck with the examples that I've done on it, but it could work. Yeah. If not, in a situation like that, just use the remove tool, and see the generated remove. Hopefully, it can generate a good eye. But a little tip of glasses, I'm sure you guys already know this, but if you don't, if you're shooting and someone's got glasses, just slightly tilt them down like this, and you can
Mhm.
probably see, see if I'm holding my glasses up at that, you can probably see the reflection of the light in there, right? But
Mhm.
tilt them down, that reflection goes away. But the other thing that a lot of people do is they take a picture without the glasses, take a picture with the glasses, put them over, and then mask it out. So it's not like that magic bullet that's going to get rid of glasses reflections yet.
Mhm.
I would imagine, just like anything, as it progresses, it gets better and better. And I would imagine, one day they will. Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more questions from Joe Libertini. He asks, does the Adobe Camera Raw remove tool with AI on, does it use your GPU or Adobe servers on the cloud?
Good question. I believe it uses the Adobe Cloud. I don't 100% know the answer to that. Be easy enough to check, which I can't because I'm doing a webinar, but just turn off the internet connection and see if it works. Would be the easy way to find out. Maybe someone else in the comments knows that. If you do, pop it in there.
Okay. And this is from an anonymous attendee. They asked, in the pic of Colin on the Brooklyn Bridge, can his pant leg be painted back in if a bite is taken out when people are removed from the background?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I would recommend doing, whenever you do something like that, is just, in this case, you still have the original image, right? So I would just create a layer. So if I was going to do it that way, I would pop this into Photoshop Let me just quickly show you sort of, since this is the last question, let me show you the sort of thing I would do. I would Command J, I would copy it, then I would go in, apply the filter, and then just put a mask on the top here, and then I could just, paint it out where I want to get the original image. Let me just invert it to make it different. Just, just so you know, I'm not obviously trying to do that, but I create a layer mask, grab a brush, and if you paint with black on that mask, you can bring back the original part of the image. So obviously this is not, what you want, but this is how you would do it. And you would just mask it back in, to get the original image underneath. So, always, give yourself room to do a mask, and you can undo things because, Camera Raw, obviously, as you know, doesn't support layers, but
Mhm.
Photoshop does. Yeah.
Okay. One last question.
Yeah.
Johnny asks, would it work with a Cell Raw Samsung 25?
I don't know because I don't have that camera, so I haven't tried it. Yeah, so I would just say try it. You know,
Okay, that was the last question. Good questions, guys. Thank you.
yeah, great questions. A lot of questions. That's good. It's good we get questions. That means you guys are watching. All right, let's go ahead and do something else inside of Camera Raw, which is another one of these kind of magical things, I guess I like to call it. I'm going to grab a couple of images here because I want to show you two different examples of this. And this is being able to expand the image or expand the edges of images. Let's grab that one. Okay, so I've got some images. By the way, if you want to open multiple raw files, you can do that. You just select them and then open in Camera Raw, and you'll see them in the thumb strip. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to straighten this photograph. Obviously, it's crooked. And so we're just going to grab the crop tool. Now, you can't do this. Remember when we opened, I showed you if you choose filter camera raw, you're not going to see the crop tool. You're not going to be able to do that. So you have to open it one of the ways that I showed you how to do that. And, they'll be on the replay. So just watch that again if you can't remember that. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the corner and we're going to straighten this. Now, if you look at this, we're losing all these areas that are in gray, we're losing in the image. In this particular image, it might not matter too much. In fact, probably really doesn't. But in some images, it does matter. We've got important detail that we want to have in those areas. So what can we do? Well, what we can do is we can choose Enable Expand. And now with Expand, we can take the crop tool. Because if we don't do that, watch this. We cannot see, I'm dragging that crop tool. It's not going to go outside the boundaries of the image. So if we choose Enable Expand, which was added late last year, I think in October, end of October, we can drag this out now and we can expand to the edge of the image. So this is one of the things you get when you crop. And I don't really care about the bottom because it's just water. I could almost crop that out anyway. But now we've got a little bit more space around the edges. And we have the ability to choose Generate for Generative Expand. And let's see how this does. Sometimes it does well, and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it looks like it's done really well. We could choose different variations if we wanted. I don't care what's outside of my crop window. I only care what's in here. And I'm going to say I like that. I'm going to keep it. And, go to another tool. There we go. We've cropped that down. It's a little soft on the edge there. We could do a little manual work if we wanted. Maybe one of the other variations looked better there. But you get the general idea. So we can do that, but look up here, looks really good. The sky looks good. Yeah. All right. So let's try a more difficult version of that. I'm going to do a panorama. So I'm going to grab these two images. And one of the things you'll know is whenever we go to merge to a panorama, one of the things we get is this weird, funky shape, right? Almost like silly putty, and we stretch it out. And that's the nature of the thing because we've got round lenses and we're going across, and there's a technical term. What is it? Something not lenticular, something ticular. Someone there, I'm not super technical, so I'm not butcher the name of it, but there's a term for it. But the thing is, whenever you shoot panoramas, you get this. So there's options we have is to, we could auto crop. And in this case, look at this, we are losing a lot of our image. Let me turn the auto crop off. We're losing these jetties here. We're losing this part. We're losing a bunch of the water at the bottom. Yeah, we're going to lose a lot. Okay. So the other option is a boundary warp. So we could drag out the boundary warp and we could stretch it out, which works pretty good for a lot of images. But in this case, whoa, we got a really curved horizon there. So maybe not working so well in that case. We could do fill edges where it uses some kind of a content aware fill to fill the edges, but it's just content aware fill. And then when we do that, we're going to get doubling up of some of the items in here. So the other way is to say, you know what? Don't worry about it. Let's just choose merge. And it will create a new DNG file, which is what happens when we work in Camera Raw, because it's non-destructive. There we are. All right. So now if we grab the crop tool, and we can go down here and under generative expand, we can hit generate, and we can do it this way. Now we're probably not going to keep everything that's generated. It's not bad. I see I got a little texture going on there. I got a little, it's a little bit darker, but let's have a look at the other variations. Not bad. I would say maybe this generation here is the best. You still got to do a little cleanup, but it's not perfect, but it sure is a lot better than what we would have got otherwise. And by the way, this is also working with a drone, so it's not even a high resolution camera. But having said that, drones are getting pretty good these days. And of course, once you've done that, you can go in and you can do all your other adjustments, like this, bring those highlights back a bit more, play around with the shadows, and do your final adjustments. Now, they recommend that you do this expansion first before you do your adjustments. And, we could do a little retouching to make it perfect, but certainly a lot better than where we were. Any questions on that or?
So far, I see no questions. My camera and internet glitched, so I'm not sure if anyone had any questions. But
Oh, okay.
so far,
That's
I
that's
see it.
that's
I don't see any.
that's fine. Well, we'll save a little time for questions at the end anyway. So if there were and we missed them, that's fine. We'll get them later. All right. So let's have a look here. Next thing I want to show you is this is brand new in Lightroom, and it was new in Photoshop Camera Raw, I believe a month or two ago. And that's using these adaptive profiles. So let me show you these. If any of you watch my YouTube videos, you'll know I have a hilarious relationship with this, which I'm not going to get into right now. But if you've seen my YouTube videos, you'll know. All right. So one of the things a lot of people don't realize when you're in Camera Raw or in Lightroom is this is shot on a Sony A1, and the camera uses a profile. Your camera when you're shooting in RAW, has a bunch of different profiles in there. You'll see things, like landscape, natural, vibrant, whatever your camera manufacturer calls it. But as default, it becomes Adobe Color. So this is what's used, the way it interprets that RAW file and how it's being interpreted into what you can see from that raw data. And it's using Adobe Color, which is kind of a generic profile, but it works pretty good. Now, you can go down the drop-down list and you can see there's other ones here. Now you're seeing, all the Adobe ones here. Now, if you click this little 4 windows, it's going to pop open and you'll notice there's another one called Camera Matching. And these are my Sony profiles. So, I could be right here, whatever these are, and as I'm going over these different profiles, you can see that this is interpreting this image in different ways. And this looks like a vivid. You might prefer some of these other profiles. Almost think of this as almost like a different type of film, so to speak. So none of our adjustments are being taken into account right now. It's just merely the way it's interpreting it. And these are the Adobe ones, and they're pretty good. Adobe Landscape, Neutral, Standard, Portrait, Vivid. You'll see the camera ones. In this case, on the Sony A1, I think they're a little bit more vibrant, but for some people, maybe too vibrant. But here's the nice thing about that. We can change these, but they've added one called Adaptive. So all of these are just a set amount of numbers that are just applied to the image. Doesn't matter what the image, it doesn't look at the image, doesn't care what the photo is, it just boom, applies that, kind of like a preset. But when we go down to the adaptive, which being added, the adaptive color, notice how much better it's looking. Now, some images don't look better with the adaptive, just so you know, but a lot of the time they are going to look better. And if you click, it will apply it. You can see the blue there is being applied. So this adaptive profile actually uses AI to analyze the image. So what it's doing is it's looking at the image and saying, hey, is this dark? Is it light? What do we think this is? What do we think? When I say we, I'm talking about the zeros and ones. That's, the AI. It's going to create a profile that it thinks is going to be the best. And quite often it's going to be better than the other profiles. Now, if it's too much, we can adjust it. We've got an amount slider here. So we can reduce it or we can increase it. But a lot of the time, when we're there, we just go hit the back button. Now, notice none of my settings have been changed. So this is not a preset. This is literally a profile. And now I can go in and say, I like this is a good starting place. I'm going to recover my highlights because I want a little bit more of that to show through there. I'm going to hit open up shadows, but I don't have to go very far because that profile got a lot of that for me. So maybe I can pull the exposure back a little bit, start to show a little bit more of that detail in the background. Maybe just pop the whites a little bit. And as you can see, we can go in here and we can make our adjustments after the fact. In fact, I probably want my exposure up. There we go. And if we look at this, there's before, there's after. So this is a really, really good starting place that I would really recommend you trying it. Now, here's the thing. When you're in the profile here, adaptive color is available. So if we were in Adobe Color, which would be the default, and I'm just going to reset all this, just double click there. Just reset all those, great. Now, you could use auto too. That's another option. But the other thing is if we go under here, now we can just choose adaptive color. And so you don't have to go digging around for it. So I would always try that and possibly even change that to your default when you're inputting things. Of course, that's entirely up to you. And that amount slider is still available right here. All right, so that profile is going to really help you get just much better looking images, in my opinion. All right, so let's see what else we can do here. I want to show you something to do with noise. Now, this one will only work with raw files that I'm about to show you right now. And this is in Lightroom, but Lightroom doesn't have as many options as Camera Raw has on this right now. And I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to grab a couple of images. Let's grab, where's another image that I know is super noisy? This one here. So I've got 3 noisy images. Let's open them in Camera Raw. All right, this one here, at the drag strip, you can see there's a lot of grain there. And I'm shooting at this at ISO 25,000. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of noise in here. And in fact, signal to noise, we've probably got, I don't know, 25% noise and 75% signal, if that, maybe a third noise. All right, so we can do the typical noise reduction. You've all seen it. And it works okay. Like just to show you manual noise reduction. If we crank this up to get rid of the noise, we start to lose a lot of detail. But as you can see there, it starts to look cartoony if we go too far. But this is us at 100%. Look at the amount of noise in this image. Not really a lot of color noise in there. Although if I pull that off, you can see the color noise now. By default, it gives a little bit. The color noise is when you see these different colored speckles. And so often what I'll do is I just take the color noise, go there till those speckles are gone, this unified color, and then you'll do luminance. All right, so the other one that we have is the ability to denoise. Once again, this only works on a raw file. So if we choose the denoise, it's going to do an AI noise reduction. Watch this. Boom. Look how clean and smooth that is without losing all that detail. Now we can adjust the amount, of course. If we want less, we can go there, we can go more. Now the amount slider is not available in Lightroom. It's just in Camera Raw. Now, if we zoom out, you can see this. If we look at this before and after, like look up here. Look at this area up there. Look how clean that is. Let me zoom in so you can see it better. After, before, after, works really well. And then it also works well on things like this. Like I love to take night shots, sometimes in super low light like this, where everything is pretty much black, but I'm just getting this little bit. And this was in slow San Luis Obispo. And but the thing is, if we zoom in here, you can see it's quite noisy. It might not bother a lot of people, but say I wanted to print this, or I wanted to crop it, or just display this as a really smooth image, because this is a kind of image that I would want to just have super super smooth, because it's kind of cool. It would look really nice in a modern house, like hanging. So let's go ahead and we're going to do the denoise. And this one is only an ISO 2000, but it's very, very dark, which is why it's looking this way with the amount of noise on it. And look at that, smooth. Look how beautiful and smooth that is. It's exactly what I want. And, obviously you might make some adjustments and stuff like that. But as you can see, that noise is gone. We start to bring out a little more detail there. Look at that. And if we were to start to do that with the denoise off, look at that ugly noise, right? So it works really well. One other one, not a great composition, but is a good example of a lot of noise here. I was driving along in my car. This, rocket was being launched. I had no idea. I thought the world was ending. This is, one of the first ones. So it wasn't something I see this every week now where I live. It comes from Vandenberg. But let's look at the noise in here. Look at this horrible noise. Of course, I didn't get a chance to even play with the settings on the camera. I just jumped out of the car and was like, oh my God, the world's ending, take pictures. All right, so let's have a look at this. It looks like a 1/32 shot at an f4 and an ISO of 25,000. All right, so let's try the denoise on this photograph. Now, this isn't something I'd really print and put on my wall. I get a better composition, but look at that. See how all that detail is being preserved here, still keeping that beautiful smooth kind of front here, and we can see there. So I'm quite impressed with that AI denoiser. Let's have a look here. Depending on whether we've got a lot of questions, I'll do one more, or I can do a couple more depending on where we're at for questions. Maybe we'll save those to the end. How are we at for questions?
We have a few questions, actually.
All right, I'll do one more example, and then maybe I'll address questions. I've got a few more I could do, but let's do this one here because I think this will be useful, and then I think we'll jump into some questions. All right, so color contamination happens all the time, right? Mixed lighting. Sometimes you can control it. Yeah, if you're in a studio, this is using a gel, so this was intentional, but not necessarily what you would always want for your photograph. But sometimes you're going to have areas, where you can't control light. And maybe you're shooting is an LED light, or maybe there's a neon light somewhere, or there's just you get this light contamination. So getting rid of this blue would typically be, difficult, right? Especially in camera raw. Maybe in Photoshop, you'd take a brush and you'd paint over it with a color in color mode, might be how you would address it. All right, so and then maybe we make a selection, try to feather the edge, but there's a tool here that might not always be obvious for getting rid of this. And let's go into here. Under the color mixer is something called point color. So point color is a way that we can target a specific color based on 3 degrees of hue, saturation, and luminance, right? So luminance is the brightness, hue is what is the color, red, green, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Those are the colors. And then the saturation is how much of that color from grayscale to full saturation is that color. So we can grab this little eyedropper tool, and I'm going to say, okay, let's grab the blue here. I know I want to select the blue. Now I could refine that selection if I wanted by moving the range and by changing the hue and saturation. So here's our hue, there's our saturation, and right in here. So our hue and saturation would be in this box, and our luminance. So we could change that, and then under the range here we could refine it. But I think we're pretty good as far as our selection. Let's have a look at how would we reduce this. The way to reduce it is, let's go first. We're going to take the hue. Let's change the hue. Let's go into something more into that range. Maybe we can take our saturation, pull that down a little bit. There we go. Now it's starting to look a little bit better. And do our luminance. We could adjust that. And as you can see, there we go. There's our before. There's our after. Now there's other issues, in here, like that hot spot around there. I mean, we could smoothen that out, retouch it, but that's not what we're doing in this video. We're just, this tutorial right here. We just want to get rid of that color cast. So you can see quite easily, you can do that. And, you can play around with hue saturation. Now, once again, if it's not showing properly, you can choose the range. The range shows what's being selected. And, and then we can refine that. See how we can go here? We can refine that area. And by turning that off or hitting that little button there, we can see just in color the areas being selected. So if we turn that range off here, you can see. So if it wasn't quite getting the area you wanted, you could use the hue saturation and luminance here to refine that and get just the area you want. All right. So I think as far as, what's new in Camera Raw, I think we've done a pretty good job of covering that. And let's go ahead and take some questions.
All righty. So we have a question from Jory. She asks, is the resolution of generated pixels in crop expand still 1024 by 1024?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So what could you do about that? If you've got 4 corners, and then maybe there's one of the corners doesn't look like it's working very well, you could always do the generative remove just on that area by itself. And then that, 1024 will be constrained just to that area instead of the entire image.
Okay, we have a question from Nath. He asks, do you know if the adaptive color will work on an iPhone RAW file?
I believe it does. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I believe these are questions regarding your last picture with the rocket in the sky. Anson asks, does sequence matter for applying profile and noise reduction to the same image?
Yeah, I would do the profile at the beginning. And depending on what you're going to do, once again, this depends on what you're going to do. If you're going to be doing any masking work, or you're going to do any layered work, I would probably do the noise reduction at the beginning. The reason for that is so then it's going to match what you do. If you're not doing that, you're mainly doing more color work, then I would, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, you have to do it at the beginning as far as the noise reduction anyway. So yeah, now I'm thinking about it, you don't have the option to do that later on. You have to do it right away. Yeah.
Okay. Robert asks, does it have banding in the sky?
It can. Sometimes you might get banding in the sky and other times you won't. But I usually find that generative fill is not usually too bad for things like banding. It's usually pretty good. But it actually, hang on a second. I just reiterate that last question. Sorry, when I said you have to do it first, let me just clarify that, because when you're in Camera Raw, you don't have to do it first. So that means if you take it into Photoshop and then you're going to do any layered work, you have to apply the noise reduction before you bring it into Photoshop. You can do other things inside of Camera Raw before the noise reduction, just so you know, but I would do it at the beginning anyway. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, the banding is not usually too bad. Usually what I see is a reduction in texture in there. Now, when you're in Photoshop, you have the ability to enhance. Let me show you. So say I was doing an image here, and let's just grab this one here. I don't know, how big is that? So I'm making sure that my selection here is bigger than 1024. If it's not bigger than 1024, it won't do anything. Let's do a generator fill. It doesn't really matter what it's going to look like. I just want to show you this option. All right, so, it looks pretty good. Let's have a look. Let's zoom in. And if we look at this before and after, okay, so it's there. Yeah, you can sort of see the resolution reduction there. Let's go in even more. Even though you're never going to really generally look at this larger than 100%, but we can see a little bit. All right, so when you're in here, you have the ability to pull that down. It's gonna, oh, I believe it's only in the beta. Okay, it's only in the beta at the moment, but it will be, oh no, there it is. There it is. So we have the ability to click here, and this will apply enhanced detail, which is super resolution. It's not increasing the resolution, but what it's doing is it's, when you use the super resolution tool, it's the same kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so it artificially upscales it, but it does a really good job of restoring the texture and everything like that. I have another video I've done on that where I explain how that algorithm works and everything like that. But yeah, so if you do have an area that's not looking good, even do it in Camera Raw. When you bring it in Camera Raw, bring it back into Photoshop if you need to a generator fill, and then do a enhance here, or just do that removal in Photoshop.
Okay, we do have a lot of questions, so for the sake of time, I'll just take maybe two or three more.
Okay.
Peter Marcus asked, does adaptive profile adjust white balance, white point, and black point, etc.?
The adaptive profile, it's not like a preset where it's adjusting it. What it will do is it will try to find the optimal color, and it will try to find the optimal tone. Now, it's not going to do that locally, as in,
Mhm.
change the color in this part of the photo and change the color in that part of the photo differently, I don't believe. But yeah, it's a, think of it as a profile, not as a preset. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Mhm.
going to try to find the best color palette to apply to it when it converts it, if that makes sense. So it's going to use, like, imagine it was like a LUT. It's generating a LUT on the fly,
Mhm.
a custom LUT, kind of like, imagine, even though it's not, but if you could think of it that way, that's
Mhm.
probably a better way to think about it. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take this last question from Devin Jinks. He said, if you use generative remove or other AI features, does it tag the image as AI manipulated for licensing or history?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yep. So if you're doing a contest or something like that, or you're worried about, the work that you're doing, like maybe you're doing journalistic work. Well, honestly, if you're doing that, you shouldn't be using any AI tools anyway.
Mhm.
So yeah, just be aware of that. It will definitely tag them as having AI. And if you go into authenticity initiative, which you can Google that if you want, which Adobe is part of that. There's a number of many companies are partners of that now, hardware and software manufacturers, where you can actually go in and use the CIA, I believe it's called Content Authenticity Initiative. And if you go on there, you can actually see what has been changed in the photo. So we'll tell you. So if you're worried about certain things, then don't use it at all. If you're worried about other things, like just, people don't believe this photo is real, or this is my artwork, well, they can go in and say, oh, he just patched something in the corner. This photo is actually a real photo. So you can see that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Colin, and
Yeah.
thank you everyone for all of your questions. I do have one last question for you, Colin. As a
Yes.
BenQ ambassador, I know you currently work on the BenQ SW series, and BenQ also has a new PD series, the 2730S 5K monitor coming out. So, what can you say really helps you in your workflow when it comes to working on BenQ monitors?
Okay. Yeah. Well, so one of the things that's really important to all of you, well, and to me, and it should be important to everybody, is color, like accurate color. Now, the thing, like, no one grabbed me by the arm and said, you must become a BenQ ambassador. I like the monitors. In fact, I was already using BenQ monitors when they approached me a few years ago. So it's something I believe in. So I'm not just going to be saying this is
Mhm.
great, but I don't use it.
Mhm.
So yeah, number one, the most important thing is accurate color, right? So you want to have color that is the real color that you're looking at. And the way to do that is, you need to, create a profile of your monitor. So you need to calibrate your monitor. I've had many monitors over the years, And one of the SW is actually the first one I've ever had that has hardware calibration. Now the SW series is a little bit more expensive, and that's because of, it has some of these things like the hardware calibration. And then when you
Mhm.
calibrate, it's just like, because I always felt like a lot of the time in the past, the colors would look too red or too just never felt like I was confident with them. But with hardware calibration, I know that when I calibrate it, it's accurate. And when I say accurate, what does that mean? That means that if I profile that printer, it's going to print. What I see on my screen is going to be very close to my printer. I'm going to say very close because it's not possible to technically get exactly the same colors from your monitor onto your printer. And that's because one of them is light and the other one's using pigment, right? But
Mhm.
it's very, very close, like really close. Like an untrained eye probably wouldn't see the difference.
Mhm.
So that's really important, is being able to calibrate that monitor and you've got accurate color. The other thing is I use multiple monitors. So I have more than, that's why I look over here and I look over there, because I have more than one monitor, and the monitors match. That's another thing that's really important. Another thing that's real important, to me, and also for you if you're looking for monitors, is consistency across the monitors, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes you can have a screen where one corner it looks a little brighter than another corner, or
Mhm.
maybe that red is a little more yellow in certain areas, and that's not good if you're working on an image.
Right.
So that's one of the things I would get you to do on your monitor, is maybe take something, blow it up, and then move it to a different part of Photoshop. See if that
Mhm.
color shifts. If it does, be aware of that, because you need to know that when you're working on your images. Now, I know BenQ are famous for the consistency across it. That's one of the things, that one of the strengths of BenQ that people know they're known for, is that consistency of color across the whole monitor. So to me, those are the most important things I care about, is accurate color and consistency of color. Now, and another thing, even if you're not using BenQ, maybe if you're using a MacBook Pro, turn off that option that they put in there. I don't think it's on my desktop. What's that option they call it? Real color or something? The eye strain thing. What do they call that thing?
Eye
Uh,
care technology?
yeah, is that what it's called in the that Apple puts in there? It's probably not on
Oh,
here.
True Tone?
True Tone. Please turn off True Tone. Like, do it now if you have that on your computer, if you're working with color. That's how important color is, because if you've got
Mhm.
True Tone, it's constantly changing. And how do you know what color it really is? So
Mhm.
so that's how important it is. Like, you want to, if you've never calibrated your monitor, go and get a puck, an X-Rite, or I've got one of these here. This is the calibrate. you know
Mhm.
Let me put up here. If you've never calibrated, I'll move my head, I don't know if it's in focus, or bring it here. Just do yourself a favor. You will be amazed at the difference, because most of the time, most of what you're getting out of the box is not very accurate. BenQ does calibrate in the factory, and it actually has a calibration report with the monitor. But even then, still calibrate that monitor. And the other thing you want to do is, at least once a month, update that calibration, because what you're seeing is what you're adjusting for, right? So you're putting all that work in Photoshop or Lightroom or Camera Raw to get colors a certain way.
Mhm.
Now, imagine if what you're looking at is not actually true, then all this work is wasted, right? Because this is what other people are going to see as well. Now, obviously, if someone else has a perfectly calibrated monitor, when you share something, it's going to look exactly the same to them, right? But the thing is, if you don't, unlike a lot of the masses don't have calibrated monitors, at least if you are properly calibrated, at least you're shooting for the medium, and most people are going to see the colors the way you want them to see it. Okay. Anyway, that's kind of, I guess I went on a little bit of a rant there about color as well. It's important.
Yes, very important. Thank you so much, Colin, and thank you for everyone for tuning in to this webinar. I believe we also had our other BenQ ambassador, Andrew, join us, so
Hey,
it's great
Andrew,
to have
how are you?
Andrew
Good to
join
see you.
on. And so again, Thank you so much, Colin, for showing us these new updates in Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop. Of course, I know I'm going to be taking some in my photo work, and I'm sure a lot of people can take something from what you said here today. And of course, for those of you who want to reference this webinar at a later date, it will be uploaded to the BenQ YouTube page, and that will be sent out to a follow-up email from to everyone here. So again, thank you for everyone, tuning in, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Friday afternoon.
All right. Thanks.
All right. See you. Have a good one.
All right. You too.